Chapter 6, The Kingdom Age. The only purpose why the church age came was to produce a son from the fallen Adamic race. This is why one faith came after the other. But religions and denominations failed. They were not able to produce a body because each of the stage in the progression of the life of the begotten Son did not continue receiving further revelations from the Almighty Father. And because they failed, the Father appointed one man who would be the fulfillment of Isaiah 53 verse 10, the seed that he saw more than 2,000 years ago. On April 25, 1950, a child was born at the foothills of Mount Apo in Tamang, Davao City, Philippines. The night Pastor Apollo was born, his mother saw a vision of the face of God smiling down at her from the sky, telling her, "The child that is born from is my son." At a very young age, when he was in high school, the Father told him, "If ye shall seek me, ye shall find me in my way." When he was 14, Pastor Apollo saw a vision of a huge, bright figure coming down from heaven like a star. As it drew closer, he saw that it was the figure of a man, shining brightly like the sun. Then he saw a pandemonium where people ran in all directions. The scene was in the house where he lived in Parang, Maguindanao, formerly part of North Cotabato, situated near oil depots and oil tankers. These depots were exploding that they set fire. People tried to run into the sea, but it was burning with flames like hell. There was nowhere to go. And then, Pastor Apollo woke up, sweating all over. On the second night, he had the same dream, only it was worse because it was in a global scale. Then a caption came into view, saying, "And the sun shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, before the notable day of the Lord come." He did not know the meaning of that until he went to Bible college, where he understood what it meant, that one day he would be in the midst of the second coming of Jesus Christ. Pastor Apollo wanted to become a pilot, but the plan of the Father was slowly beginning to fulfilled in his life. Instead of going to a secular school after graduating from his secondary education, he found himself in a Bible college, being trained extensively in the Word of God. He became an evangelist, traveling from one city to another. As he went to Bible college, he realized that the captions he saw in his vision and heard from God were in the words of God in Jeremiah 29 verse 13 and Acts 2 verse 20. In Bible college, he grew deeper in his words, until he gave him the gift of preaching. It was an unusual gift that even if he would stop speaking, the words would still flow inside his heart. Even if he was in the shower, he would still preach, as if a well was springing inside his body. But instead of water, words were pouring out of him. If he closed his mouth, words would still get out. He was preaching the Word of God freely that he didn't have to think about what he was going to say. That was when he noticed that there was something spiritual guiding inside of him. In 1973, he was sent for a world conference in Korea for 2 weeks as a representative of the Philippine International Youth Corps. He was the only Asian representative and the only Filipino who went to Seoul, South Korea with young people from the USA and Canada. During a prayer session while they were singing and praying, the mighty presence of the Almighty Father was felt in the ballroom of the hotel. It was so strong that profuse tears were flowing from his eyes. That's when he heard the Father's audible voice in the Cebuano dialect, saying, "Gamitan ta ka, El will use you." The experience was so strange and he thought that someone was playing a trick on him. But as he looked around, there was nobody else in the room but him who could speak the language. Questions arose in his mind. Because at that time, He thought that he was already being used by the Father, for he was already a known evangelist in his denomination. Back the Philippines, while he was at the Manila domestic airport waiting for a flight to Palawan, he heard the same voice 3 times, Gamita Taka. Upon hearing the voice again, Pastor Apollo's tears flowed like a flood and heart pounded heavily. It seemed like it was squeezed from the inside. The Father's orchestration in his life continued. In 1973, he met a man who purposely came to see him in Davao City. He told Pastor Apollo to come to the Imperial Hotel because God has a message for him. There he saw another vision. The ceiling of his hotel room opened up like a double-paneled door. He is a star from the night sky slowly descending. It grew larger and larger, and as it drew closer, he saw a hand bringing a bronze cauldron which was lowered in front of him. A voice told him, "That's bronze, take it." There were words written on the cauldron, and only those which were written in the English language were the words which he was permitted to reveal, which said, "Strive to rhyme for unity." Until one day, confusion came. Pastor Apollo became so controversial in the denomination that the Father had to use a man to take him out of there. This happened while he was the apple of his church elders' eyes, when everything was being offered to him, to go to the U.S., to marry his beautiful American girlfriend, and to have a family of his own. In the middle of all of these, the Father took him. It was a powerful hand that took him out of his comfortable nest in the denomination. He wanted to stay, but it was as if he's losing control of what was happening in his life. The powerful hands of God were already pulling him, though he was not yet 100% sure that it was indeed God who was orchestrating everything in his life. One day, he found himself in the mountain of Kitbog in Malalag, Cogon, together with the Bilan natives. What is the significance of Kitbog? 1. The proving of the Father's call. In this mountain, he endured physical and spiritual hardship. But the Father comforted him with palpable supernatural manifestations. At first, the miracle that he witnessed would stay with him for a day, then he would be in doubt again, his denominational mind would come back again. Then it began to stay with him for 2 days, and it became longer every time. It became a week, then months, until the son came to realize that it was the Father who was really calling him. He could not lay his head at night for 1 minute without him beginning to see some visions, tangible miracles, and the audible voice of the Father talking to him. 2. The taking of the denominational system out of him. Taking out of the denomination was easy, but taking the denomination out of his system was not, considering the fact that he grew up there spiritually. That was where he started to serve God, and that was all that he knew. The Father had to be careful. Just like a tree when it is transplanted, the most critical moment is when it is uprooted and planted again. The pull of the denominational gravity in the son's life was so great. His loved ones and his friends in the denomination were telling him that he was being deceived. While he was in the process, there were times when he could not stop thinking that what they were saying might be true. His love for his American girlfriend and the plan of having a family of his own were also adding up to his struggle. But the thing that the son held on to was the sincerity in his heart that says, "I really want to find you, Father. There is something in my heart that would like to be satisfied, and it cannot be satisfied by anything but by an encounter with you." That has kept him from listening to all those voices around him that were opposing God's pull in his life. 3. The implantation of the righteous seed. In Kitbog, out of his freedom of choice, he decided to surrender the serpent seed by making a promise that, "Father, from now on, Not my will but thy will done in my life. That was the surrendering of the serpent, the spirit of disobedience which is human will, and finally receiving the implantation of the righteous seed of the Almighty Father, which is the spirit of obedience to His will. The Father dealt with the Son in a way that He would really realize that He was the one calling him. When He knew that it was the Father who called him, the Father's revelations stopped and He told him, "It's up to you now to follow me or not. When you follow me, how will you follow me? Strongly or weakly? It's your decision." It was all His decision. If He decided to weaken Himself, He could have done it. If He decided to leave in the middle of it all and say, "I'll go back to my denominational world," He also could have done it. If He decided to reconcile with His brothers who were persecuting Him, He could. It all depended on His decision. And nobody forced Him to do it. He had to prove it. So, trials and temptations came, the things He should be exposed to according to Matthew 7:24-25. The wind, the rains and the storm came and beat upon the house. He was exposed to that. He was not shielded from all those trials. He was exposed and tried. It took the Son 1 year before he realized that all the things that he saw, the visions, the supernatural things, the miracles, were all the Father's dealings with him to convince him that it was really the Almighty Father who was calling him for a very special mission. After a year, he weighed everything in the balance of eternity, and there, using his freedom of choice, decided to follow the Father's will. This is the reason why Kitbog is called the Mountain of Decision. It was where the first spiritual revolution happened. When the spirit of disobedience that man has inherited from Adam and Eve was uprooted. 4. The restoration of the state of innocence. When he decided to follow the Father's will no matter what, the spirit of disobedience was dislodged from within him and was replaced by the seed of righteousness, the spirit of obedience to His will. State of innocence means, man now knows nothing but doing the Father's will. In the mountain of decision, a child was born in fulfillment of Isaiah 9 verse 6. He was placed in the position of our first parent in the flesh, Adam. In his innocence, in his kitbog, he only received one command. After knowing Him, his doubts were all erased in his kitbog. He was born in the Spirit because he decided to follow His will and said, "From now on, I will follow your will." He was in the infancy stage like Adam. So in this mountain, a child was born.